Hey everyone, welcome back to another out-of-spec detailing video here from Clear Detailing in Northern Colorado. Today we are checking out a brand new product from Active. You might know them from the pressure washer world with their Active 2.0, 2.3, and recently their brand new Active 3.0. But in today's video, we're not reviewing any sort of pressure washers. We're talking about this. This is the new Active S350 automotive car dryer. If you guys have been watching this channel for any amount of time, you'll know I absolutely love using a product very similar to this, the Blow Car Dryer Air GT. And in today's video, we're going to be reviewing this, comparing it to what I'm traditionally using, talk about when and why you would actually want to use one of these, and figure out if this thing is actually worth your money. Welcome back to the channel. Let's jump into it. Well guys, thank you all so much for joining me on today's video. I am very excited to dive into Active's first product outside of the pressure washer realm, pressure washer accessories, and see what their vision is of car care products to actually use on a daily basis. Now, I have actually been using this product for the past week or so, seeing how it kind of fits in my detailing business here. Now, I am a huge believer in a air cannon like this, if you will, or an automotive car dryer. We'll talk a bit about that in a second, but I definitely have some thoughts on this. And that brings up a good point here. Before we dive into the review, Active did send this unit out to me completely free of charge. Now, if you guys know anything about me, anything about this channel, I will give you my unbiased opinions. I will tell you whether this thing's junk and rather to go buy something else. I'll tell you whether it's awesome, you should go spend your hard-earned money on it, or if there's some feedback of things that I would like to see improved. Spoiler alert, there's actually quite a bit I'd like to see improved here. So without further ado, let's jump into the review. So first things first, before we dive into this product, kind of tear it apart, say what's good, what's bad, what I'd like to see improved, let's talk about car dryers like this and where I see them, where I actually use them in my business. Now, as I said in the intro, I actually use a competitor to this product and I've been using it for years. And in fact, even before that product, I used to use the original Master Blaster. I absolutely love these things. Now, where I actually see these things fit in is typically when I'm washing a car, then I go to dry it. I'm taking a nice microfiber drying towel. I'm getting the large areas, all of the paint, as much as the glass, as much as the car I can get dry with that towel, I'm going to do so. Then I'm going to come back in with this, blow out all the nooks and crannies, all around the grills, engine bays, door jambs, wheels, emblems, all those tiny little nooks and crannies that hold a bunch of water and inevitably drip all that water out. And if you don't get to those by just towel drying your car, you're going to have streaks going down the side of your car. That's not what you want after the fact. Now, I know there is a lot of people out there who actually like using something like an Ego leaf blower with a stubby nose attachment on it, drying most of their paint, but that doesn't really do well for those tight nooks and crannies. Now, a lot of folks who actually use those will use an air compressor. Now, personally, I am not a huge fan of using air compressors. Number one, they're typically pretty noisy. The hoses are annoying on them, kind of annoying to set up. If you have to set it up every time, it just kind of becomes a nightmare. And that's why I've used these pretty much since I started detailing. And every single time I'm washing a car, I'm using a product very similar to this. So what is this actual product? This is the Active S350 automotive car dryer. Now this retails right at $299. It says 350 miles per hour of wind speed. Now, personally, I don't think that's the thing you should actually focus on. And we'll talk a lot about that when we start comparing this to the Blow Car Dryer Air GT. Compare the performance on it, because truth be told, this thing's a little bit weaker than I actually thought it was going to be. Now, one of the things they are very proud of with this, and what Active is very much trying to do, is quiet everything down. So this has a claimed 75 decibels. I will be comparing the noise performance to each. The Blow Car Dryer doesn't actually say what the decibel reading is, but I'll tell you whether one is louder than another and whether it's a significant enough change for me to actually care about. Now, looking up the specs here, they say right at 180 CFM, which might not sound that impressive, and I would probably agree with you. Again, going back to that previous point, I wasn't really blown away with the overall power of this thing. But speaking of power, this is a 15 amp unit, meaning you can plug it into any receptacle. Now, it's one of the negatives with the other car dryers out there. I'm thinking the Blow Car Dryer, even the one from Adams, actually require you to have a 20 amp circuit. So this could be a little bit underpowered, but be a little bit easier for everybody to use if you don't have 20 amp power. Looking at the actual unit here, this is where I think Active does a very, very good job at designing products. It is aesthetically very, very pleasing. Pretty much across the board, I think Active does a really nice job of making sure all of their products look very premium, very clean, and they'll pretty much work with anybody's setup. So you can throw them up on a nice wall like this, you can have them in your home garage. They just feel like a good step above almost everything else out there. Now, the unit, what I really like about it, it's nice and compact. Up here, you actually have a very nice handle, which is very sleek. Once you pull this, very, very nice to actually move around. Now, you'll also notice this actually has wheels on it. And that's one thing that I really appreciate about this is they did a nice job with the wheels. So you have large back wheels. So essentially, when you're rolling around the car, you're just have the hose at one side. This thing's like your little buddy or your little dog that you're carrying around with you. And it does a great job at that. Up front, you have casters so that it's not going to get stuck and you don't have to like rip it across and then it flips over on itself. I've used that in the past with a lot of car dryers. So overall, I'm pretty darn impressed with the actual unit, the aesthetics, the design, and the overall premium feel of this thing. Now, let's talk a little bit about the hose because this is another area I was really disappointed with. Now, again, I use the Blow Car Dryer Air GT. That comes with a 26-foot hose. If you look at the Adams Air Cannon, that comes with a 30-foot hose. This only has a 20-foot hose. Now, for a lot of people, this is actually not going to be a problem. I'm thinking of those folks who wash their car outside in their driveway. They may mount this on a wall. It actually does come with a wall-mounted bracket for that $299, which is awesome to see. And they're pretty much going to take it down every time. And 20 feet is going to be enough to get around your car. Now, personally, here in my shop, I prefer to have a longer hose because I can leave something like this mounted on the wall, just undo the hose, go do my drying needs and just fold it back up. Takes way less time to set up, tear down, plug in, do all that stuff. Just makes it a lot easier. Now, what I do like about the hose though, it is very, very high quality here. Now, the cool thing is this actually expands when it turns on. So this expands to 20 feet, but is only 7.5 feet in its compact form here. And I gotta say, overall, the first thing I noticed about this was actually how heavy the hose was. It feels very, very premium, and you can see how it actually expands there. Now you can see up here, number one, we have a very nice kind of a foam grip up here, which is one of the issues I've had on my Blow Car Dryer in the past. Very, very rigid plastics up here. Very much feel like if you drop this on the ground, which I do all the time, this is not going to break on you. And then the tips basically quick connect in, which is really, really good to see. So let's quickly talk about the tips over here. Now we have 3 different versions of these. We'll start off with the one I was most interested in using, and this is actually the Venturi hose. So you can see this little hole inside of here, which essentially is blowing air through it and then sucking air in to essentially get more overall airflow onto the vehicle. Now I personally got to tell you, I've been a little underwhelmed with this one. I thought this was going to be like end all be all. This was going to totally change the game. I'm a little underwhelmed by it. Now, again, very nice hard plastics on this. The one thing I'm a little disappointed with is the actual rubber tips on this. Now, I think this is very important that they put premium quality rubber tips on this because you're working up next to a car. If you accidentally smack the paint, of course, you don't want to scratch it. This is a little hard for my liking. It might sound nitpicky, but it is one of those things. Now, to actually put this on, you simply slide the guide pins in, twist it. This one's a little more challenging because this part twists separately from the base and it's actually on. So that is really nice to have there. Now, this one is what they call their duck bill. And I have used these in the past. I have never really been a fan of these, at least on the Blow Car Dryer. This one, I kind of feel the same thing. It is more of a fan and technically does a more widespread area, but it's never been ideal. Now, again, what you'll see in a lot of the promotions with products like this, whether it's from Adams, whether it's from Blow Car Dryers or Active in this case, is that you are drying your entire car with just this. And that personally has never been ideal for me. Now, if you do want to do that, I would definitely recommend getting something like an Ego leaf blower. Those are way better for just drying off the car quickly like that. But then again, you still have to deal with all those nooks and crannies, the emblems, door jambs, engine bays, wheels, grills, all of that stuff, where I think these are more optimized. So again, I personally prefer using a towel. Now, the tip that I actually prefer, which is essentially the same exact tip I use on the Blow Car Dryer here, is a 16mm precision tip. And I think this is definitely the best one. Feels the overall most powerful, especially in those intricate areas. That's where I want this precision. So again, very easy to lock on here. Again, I will still say the rubberized tips, not as impressive as I necessarily hope to. Now, the other thing you should actually know about this unit is heating ability. Now, this actually does not have a heating element in it. This actually utilizes an induction motor, and what they essentially do is the waste heat off of that motor actually comes out the tip of this, meaning that about 40 to 60 degrees above the ambient temperature of which you're working, that's what this is going to get to. And that is one big positive that I've been really impressed with this machine about, is how quickly it gets hot. Now, the heat in there, of course, helps dry a little bit easier, a little bit quicker overall, and importantly, this is also filtered. Now, for me and for most people, this might be a big deal. I've heard some of you say you don't really care that it's filtered. I personally think it's important. They have actually utilized a double filter in the back. So you screw off this back. They're washable, replaceable filters. That is a nice thing to see because you don't want to be blowing a bunch of dust that's coming through here and right onto your paint. It's like little stone chips, of course. Now, again, that can be a little bit over dramatized, but it's nice to know there's a little bit of a safety guard there. Now, one thing I was also disappointed with this unit about was the lack of variable speed control. So up here, which is very nicely designed, very simple, on off. Absolutely love that. But there is no speed control on this. Now, the other two units that sit in this kind of same price bracket, the Blow Car Dryer Air GT for $329, utilizes variable speed control. The Adams Air Cannon, $339 without the wall mount, $369 with the wall mount, does come with that variable speed control. So you can see this is definitely less expensive overall, but for me, definitely missing a couple of features that I really hope to see. So that variable speed control, longer hose on here, and a little bit more power overall. So that is a little bit of a negative, but I think now that we understand that, last thing I want to touch on is the wall mount here. It actually does feel very nice. It's the same powder coated gray. So if you have the full active wall mount pressure washer setup, this is going to go very, very nice right next to it. And the cool thing here is you actually have areas to actually put your tips right on top of here, which none of the other car dryers actually have. And this actually mounts to the bottom of the unit here to hold it up. And you can see this area up top is actually going to hold your hose. So next thing I want to do here is actually start up this unit versus my Blow Car Dryer. We're going to do it without the hoses here. We'll compare the noise and then we'll actually get into some performance and tell you about that overall power. All right, so this is the Blow Car Dryer Air GT that I was telling you about. This is what I've been using for the past, gosh, it's got to be going on over 6 years at this point. Have really had no issues with this unit. Now, you can see these side by side. I will definitely give the overall design, aesthetics, the quality, the feel to the Active here. This thing's definitely not quite as nice looking. I don't love that the cable is actually up top, much prefer it on the bottom. You know, I definitely think the casters here are a little underwhelming compared to what's going on here. But the big thing I want to talk about here is noise performance, because Active is claiming whisper quiet here, 75 decibels. Now, I want to do this in two separate ways here. I want to do it without the hose on so we can just hear a little bit more of the motor. Now, most of the time what you're actually hearing is coming out of the tip of these things. Now, I always recommend you wear hearing protection. What I use here at the shop when I'm drying a car down, Apple AirPods with active noise canceling. And for me, the noise doesn't actually matter, but I want to talk about the overall volume of this, the overall pitch, overall tone, because I know for a lot of you washing at home, this can be a big deal. You don't want to annoy the heck out of your neighbors. So let's start off here with the Blow Car Dryer. I'm going to start this off at minimum. What you're going to notice about this versus the Active here, this has a little bit softer start on it, so it does take a little bit to wind up. It's actually for the motors in here. And yes, this is actually a twin motor. But again, remember, this is a 20 amp unit versus a 15 amp unit. So as I turn this on, you can hear it start up here. Pretty darn quiet. We can start turning this up. It's about halfway there. I don't know how that comes through on camera. I've never been offended at the noise of this. Sounds very nice, sounds very healthy, and it's always sounded like this. Let's come over here to the Active. So a little bit deeper, sounds a little louder. This one sounds more like a vacuum cleaner to me, which is kind of funny because essentially these things are a vacuum motor essentially turned around. That's, I believe, how the original Master Blaster actually came to be. But let's actually put the hose on these and see how they sound with that. Now, the hose here on the Air GT, you can see quick connect, very similar to the Active Dryer here. Actually, up front here, they have a rubber O-ring on the Active one. I'll show you that in a second, but we've got our hose here. Now, one important thing with the hose, and I always laugh because my brother has done this in the past. Now, a lot of the times you would want to extend the whole hose out, kind of get this thing set up. Then you walk away from the end of the hose, you go to turn this thing on, and this thing starts whipping around and smacking your car. So anytime you are starting both of these units, make sure you are holding it, because it just becomes one of those crazy dealership dudes that's waving its arms everywhere, and you don't want to smack this on your actual car. So this is going to be at full speed here. Sounds pretty good to me. I mean, it's not something you can really talk over, as I'm sure you can actually hear, but what you will notice is when you're on the car, which we'll get to in a second, this hitting the actual paint, all those nooks and crannies, create some incredibly loud noises. So again, make sure you're wearing hearing protection. All right, so grabbing the Active hose here, first thing I can tell you guys, this thing is heavy, which is kind of surprising. And I'm not sure that's necessarily a positive thing. In one hand, it feels more premium, and another hand, it is quite heavy. Once it's extended out, it's not too bad. Now, as I put this on here, you can actually see this rubber O-ring, which doesn't really sit that great, but you do have these 4 notches up top, which I think will be fine. Now this, again, just twists to lock there. Now, when we actually turn this thing on, of course, number one thing you can see, the hose is very heavy, but curious to see how this actually sounds. Maybe slightly, I don't know. It's a totally different, yeah, it's a different tone overall. I don't know how it picks up on camera if one is crazy louder than another. They sound very, very similar in terms of overall loudness. This one I might give a slight more pleasant tone to. This one has more of a industrial vacuum type noise to it, where I think I do kind of prefer this. But now that we understand the noise, let's head over to the car and talk about the big thing here, the performance. All right, so as you can see here on the front end of my EV6, it's nice and wet. Now, I personally would never have this much water on the car using one of these. You absolutely can if your car is ceramic coated. Again, that's where I think something like the Ego blower might be a little bit more better suited to that, or drying it with a towel, then coming back in with this. But I want to show you the overall performance of this. This car is ceramic coated, so let's turn on the Active Dryer. All right, so a quick little dry there. Of course, the biggest thing I'm concerned about is getting in these nooks and crannies. Now, first thing I notice, I am getting quite a bit of air leak in here. So seems to me there needs to be maybe more of a rubber gasket inside of there. But the thing I have noticed here, drying the car down in general, it just feels a little underpowered compared to what I'm used to, that blow car dryer here. Now, it's not to say it's bad. I mean, we can clearly get water out of the headlight area, out of the lower grills. I could clearly spend more time on this, but just a quick showcase here. You can still get the job done here. So don't take this as this isn't doing the job. It's just not quite as powerful as the blow car dryer, in my opinion. All right, so let's do the same thing with the blow car dryer at maximum power. So I think you guys can probably hear the difference here, especially when we start getting into these cracks. A lot more powerful overall sounding whistle. And that's something subjectively I have to tell you here. I can't really objectively show you guys the real difference here. I can just tell you it is way more power on the Blow Car Dryer versus the Active. So that to me was not really what I expected here. You know, I look at the marketing claims, see 350 miles per hour, it's whisper quiet. I'm like, man, this might be my new replacement blower. And then I used it and I was just like, underwhelmed, I think is the best way to put it. Well guys, I hope that small little demo was insightful and can show you what these can do. Now I'm sure pretty much everybody has seen some version of this, of blowing out nooks and crannies and grills. So I didn't want to spend a ton of time on it, but I am coming out of this review a little conflicted and confused, which is why this has taken me so long to post, because I actually wanted to spend time with this unit and actually use it. And again, this is the challenging thing with what I do and how I view things, and I think kind of how the world is. It's one of those things like once you experience a car, it feels really fast, and then you experience a faster car and that feels like a new level. Then you go back down and you're like, wow, that car I used to think was fast no longer feels that fast. And that's kind of the thing I'm feeling here. You go to pressure washers, you know, when the Active 2.0 came out, you know, most people were experiencing big box store pressure washers that are like 1.2 gallons per minute. You go to 2 gallons per minute, you're like, holy crap, this is so much water. Then you go to a 2.3, then you go to a 3.0, and then you go backwards and it's like, wow, this thing feels really weak. So that's kind of the case in point of what I'm feeling here. So this is definitely down on power, but that again also does have benefits here because this is a 15 amp circuit usable unit versus needing a 20 amp over here. I do think this is more inclined for the wide mass of people. So I'm glad they have that. Now I do wish they would make like a pro version of this. Let this thing rip, have variable speed controls on it, crank it up to 11 and give me all the power. Now the interesting thing is I use the same amp meter that I use for all my pressure washer testing here. This thing on my voltage, which is 122.3, I believe here, pulled 15.7 amps continuous. So technically, theoretically, you could run this on 15 amp circuits. I actually have none here at the shop. Every 110 here is all 20 amps. So I can't really test that for you. So technically you can run it with that headroom and non-continuous load, all the nerdy electrical stuff. But then again, you also might start tripping breakers where this isn't actually going to work for you. Then you got to dial it down. So you kind of get where I'm going there. I think the most disappointing thing for me with this unit is they had an opportunity. And the reason I say this is because I really feel like Active has been such a leader in the industry. You go back to, you know, pressure washers, you look at the 2.0 of what they did to the pressure washer industry, they turned it up on its head because everybody had been experiencing those big box store pressure washers. They use a 2.0, they're like, what? This thing's crazy. That's kind of what I expected here, but the missing features of not having variable speed control on this, not giving us more than a 20-foot hose feels very, very lame, and not really totally dialing in all of these tips. That kind of stuff I'm a little disappointed with, and given the power, I'm really not sure the Active is going to replace my favorite Blow Car Dryer over here, at least for now. But again, I think for most of you at home, you can absolutely get work done with this. I have used this on multiple details this week and it works fine. It just feels like it takes a little bit longer than this bad boy over here. So that is my review here. Thank you again to Active for sending this unit out. We do have some more Active products unveiling at the end of the week, so stay tuned here on the channel. I'll be the first one to share those with you. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see another one soon. Bye-bye.